In today's fast-paced digital world, dating apps have revolutionised how people meet and form connections, offering instant access to a huge pool of potential partners with a mere swipe of a finger. However, beneath this convenience lurks a much darker reality, with significant risks that are often overlooked by many users. The anonymity and ease of use that these platforms provide has created a breeding ground for deception and harm, with catfishing, scams, abuse, and predatory behaviour all on the rise across our world. However, in this particular case, technology was crucial in uncovering the details of the crime. Various digital tools and platforms helped investigators piece together the events and behaviours leading up to and following the incident. Surveillance cameras captured the moments of both the victim and the perpetrator throughout the night. Text messages exchanged between the perpetrator and other women via a dating app, along with phone data, revealed a travelling pattern of predatory behaviour. The perpetrator's internet searches after the murder further exposed their intent. They looked up information on body disposal and researched strangulation methods. Data from dating apps helped expose the perpetrator's history of abusive behaviour towards women. Conversations with other individuals highlighted manipulative tendencies, further implicating the perpetrator and demonstrating that the crime was part of a broader pattern of violence. Never has a case been so poignant and caused so much grief and distress, and rarely has it caused so much outrage and heartbreak all over the world.
Hello and welcome to I Could Murder a Podcast. We're back once again on the other side of the world. Ben, how are you doing?
Doing good. Jet lagged, getting used to the climate, but no, really happy to be in one of mine and Tom's combined sort of favourite places in the world. Very nice place in the world. And Dan, a place that we know you would just adore.
I feel a bit left out because you've both been there, you both love it, and it looks like a wonderful place. I wish I could go. I probably could go. But right
definitely
now,
can.
Definitely.
I've got no plans to go.
Yes, today's case is over in New Zealand. And of course, it is Jesse Kempson, the Tinder killer, also known as the murder of Grace Millane.
Yeah, this was one when we sat down and sort of planned our series out. This was the one that stood out to me that, perhaps we could cover this as a sort of minisode. It sort of seemed like a kind of cut and dry case, but the amount of different elements that go into this case and just the amount of evil that is involved in this case was really shocking when researching this. And just, I think as well, the opinions we're seeing online about this case is really upsetting as well. So it's one that I'm interested to go through with you boys.
Definitely. I mean, you pointed out to me, I hadn't actually clocked all the comments on other videos that are out there of this case and people's opinions, and very much victim blaming, which we're going to say from the outset we're not going to tolerate over on our comments. But it's a very interesting one. It's one that some people have said it's like the most CCTV'd case as well. Like, you can literally piece together the whole evening, stage to stage. You got the interrogation as well, which is very interesting. And it's coming from a very kind of unassuming person as well, which I found disturbing as well. We'll get into it, but in all things considered, the date went well. But yes, we'll unpack all of that. But Ben, what other names does this case go by?
So this week it is the Tinder killer, the Jesse Kempson case, the murder of Grace Millane, the British Backpacker murder, a date with murder, the Auckland suitcase killing, the horrors of room 308, and I sell Kinder eggs reversed. Hands up, that was, this is actually made me a bit angry. Kinder eggs, Kinder, and I sell them, I'm a tiller, Kinder tiller, Tinder killer. I did try to use both of their names, but just, Kempson, Millane. Maybe Millane I could have done something, but I've gone with Kinder tiller.
I'll be very surprised.
Yeah, same. I'm sorry.
I've just never heard someone being called a tiller.
Get on those checkouts, you tiller. I need to get my shopping through.
Well done if you did get that. But yes, it is a fascinating case. It's one, as I said, so much footage, which obviously we'll share a lot of it within this episode. And just very interested to hear what your guys' takes are on Jesse Kempson.
Absolutely. Let's jump into it. December 1st, 2018. After sharing a few drinks together at several different bars around the centre of the city of Auckland, 21-year-old British backpacker Grace Millane and 26-year-old New Zealand native Jesse Kempson, who appeared to be enjoying one another's company, make their way back to Kempson's apartment at the CityLife Hotel. Entering an elevator together, the pair make their way up to the 3rd floor of the building, where they then head to Kempson's $190 a week room. As many drinks have been consumed, this is odd, but not too concerning for Grace, who had been told by the man she had matched with on Tinder that he was a, quote, manager of an oil company. Unbeknownst to Grace, she has just entered the temporary home of a man with an extensive history of manipulative, abusive, highly troubling and dangerous behaviours, and she would sadly not leave the room alive. What followed was a series of crimes and surveillance images that shocked and appalled the world, whilst also fueling an already enraged debate regarding government gagging orders and the suppression of information. Grace Millane had her life tragically cut short in the most brutal of fashions during the hours immediately preceding or just establishing her 22nd birthday. Thousands of miles away at her family home in Essex, family members were making video calls and sending text messages that were piling up on Grace's phone, but they would sadly never be seen or answered. Her body and her family was then subjected to a further series of degradation and a labyrinth of lies as Jesse Kempson did what he always had done: stayed as far away from the truth as possible.
So how exactly did their paths come to cross? Were there any warning signs or red flags that Grace might have spotted during the pair's brief interactions? What clues from Jesse's past have suggested that he was a danger to the general public long before they met? And why did Jesse make the decision to bring such a brutal end to such a young and promising life as she entered her 22nd birthday? We're going to start with the background on Jesse, now internationally dubbed the Tinder Killer, and explore his early life in as much detail as we're able to, in order to understand if he was born a monster or formed into one prior to meeting Grace.
And just to add to what Tom said earlier about victim blaming, there is so much that has come out here during exploring Jesse's background that is the reason why we're starting with him before moving on to the background of Grace, because for all of this that's happened in his life, Grace had absolutely no idea about any of this. And as Tom said, when they did meet, I mean, she was reluctant to meet at first, which we'll get into. You know, they had a great date. They were getting on well. The direct quote was that she really clicked with him. And when we now go through this background, it's particularly horrifying to the point that he then meets Grace.
Definitely, and also, like, you're young, you're going away, you're going on a trip around the world, you're excited, you just had a day, got on with the person very well, and, like, people shaming that, and the fact that she went to the hotel is just, yeah, I find that ridiculous.
Awful.
Wait, we were saying before we filmed, if it was a male, there's no way you'd get any of these comments. A male going back to a girl's on the first night, you know, it just wouldn't happen. Yeah.
Jesse Shane Kempson was born on the 28th of December 1991 in the city of Lower Hutt, which is in the Wellington region of New Zealand. You been? Wellington?
Yeah, my sister used to live in Wellington.
Fantastic.
Oh.
It's called Windy Wellington. It is quite cold and
Gassy.
very windy. Yeah. Yeah, no, when Ben visited maybe, but no, it's a nice spot.
Pass through, yeah. No family there, just.
But it is really nice there. Quite hipstery, has to be said.
Yes.
But yeah, lots of filming happens there.
Do you have a preference of islands, Tom? North or South, did you?
I haven't been to South.
Oh.
I've only been to North, so I couldn't say, but South looks lovely.
Yeah, South was fun. They're both beautiful.
He was the first of two boys born to Shane and Barbara Kempson, though he and his brother would be separated when Jesse was just 9 years old and his younger brother was 3 years old as their parents divorced. The divorce resulted in Jesse's mother moving to Australia and taking his brother with her, whilst Jesse would remain in the Lower Hutt area of New Zealand and was predominantly raised from this point onwards by his father and paternal grandfather. Jesse's father regularly worked away from the family home, which meant he would often stay at his grandparents' house. Both his father and grandfather have been described as incredibly strict and also violent, which resulted in occasional stays within the care system, as well as boarding houses for Jesse.
So straight off the bat, the city of Lower Hutt, and there are arguments about whether it's a city or not, and that will rage on beyond this episode, I'm sure. But if it is a city, sixth largest in New Zealand, and the city's motto is Lower Hutt, a great place to live, work, and play. And with the exception of what we're going to go on to talk about with Jesse's childhood, it does seem like a lovely part of the world to grow up. NewZealand.com describes it as an outdoor haven filled with unexpected treasures, picturesque walking and cycling trails, expansive coastal views, and nature sanctuaries, including a chance to wander our hills where wild native kiwi foam. Rome. Where wild native Kiwi roam. But yeah, obviously from looking into Jesse's background, it appears his childhood was far from idyllic. But that sounds lovely, like lovely little place, Lower Hutt.
You can still have a shit time in a beautiful place.
That's true. And you can have a beautiful time in a shit place. It's all about attitude. No, don't put that in.
It's all about attitude.
And you can also have an amazing time in a shit place. Life.
That's deep, man.
Thanks, bro.
And the fracture of the family dynamic together with the complete separation from his mother and brother was something that he believed he never fully recovered from. He was not offered the chance to visit the other half of his family over in Australia, and his new life under the rule of his father was incredibly difficult to adjust to. His father was allegedly highly confrontational and on occasion violent with him, and he would also suggest to a young Jesse that his mother and brother had rejected them both and wanted nothing to do with either of them, especially Jesse. Jesse!
Yeah, that's horrible, isn't it?
That is, yes. Obviously, we've covered many a case before where, you know, rejection from a family member can lead to the kids spiralling, and people deal with things in different ways. Two judges at Jesse's late pre-trial hearing and trial, Justice Vennin and Justice Simon Moore, would state the following on his childhood.
I accept that you had a volatile upbringing, and that may well have influenced the person you are today. Your father was at times violent towards you. Your mother rejected you. That may go some way towards explaining your attitude towards women. You have also a disrupted childhood with a number of different carers.
I mean, we're going to go into it, and Ben's already kind of stated that Jesse would always seem to weave a web of lies about his life, about his job, about his family. And I wonder if that's just escapism from his part because of his childhood and him wanting to move away from it and putting himself in a different kind of headspace. But it is sad, and it's like, you know, people do deal with that in different ways. Despite this, Jesse seemed to get on well at school and formed a small group of friends that he would play various sports and games with. He attended Ottawa College in Porirua, where he was said to have excelled at softball, later going on to represent various schools in regional competitions. Both of his parents found new partners, with his father remarrying and Jesse becoming the older brother to a half-brother in the years that followed. As he grew into his teenage years, he started taking antidepressant and anxiety medication, occasionally mixing these medications with alcohol, and he also regularly started to attend counselling sessions. On one occasion, he completed an 8-hour drive from Wellington to Auckland, where he was subsequently arrested and charged with driving under the influence and public disorder. In an interview with Detective Ewan Settle, Jesse recalled,
It was tough at the time, but through counselling, I got through it. I think the fact I was able to talk about it with someone who was a professional counsellor was good for it. It's pretty complicated. We are a mixed-match family. I never see my mum's side. I see my father's side. I see my half-brother, but I'd love to see my full brother.
Yeah, that must be, as Tom said, that must be really difficult to go through. I mean, what is New Zealand to Australia? It's a few hours, isn't it, still by plane?
Yeah.
So it's not as if he can, and the fact as well that his mother was trying to distance herself and his younger brother from them, or at least it appeared that way. That must be, really heartbreaking.
Well, it just feels like they've both restarted their lives without him, essentially, haven't they? And he just feels like, where do I belong if I don't belong with one or the other?
Yeah, really horrible. After leaving school, Jesse started working in the kitchen of his local pub before also becoming a bartender and working on numerous building sites as a labourer. It seems as though when he entered adulthood, he started becoming increasingly more depressed and isolated as he continued to think about his estranged family. It's not exactly clear whether this was 2010 or 2013, but either at the age of 19 or 22, Jesse made the decision to move to Sydney, Australia. It was out here that he believed he could be reunited with his mother and brother, though there are also rumours that he had briefly lived with his mother as a teenager, but she made him return to his father back in New Zealand. Either way, Jesse would spend the next several years working and living out in Australia, seemingly creating a new identity for himself along the way. And yeah, this is where the lies start to spin, and some of them are incredibly elaborate, some of them are repeated ones to different people, and yeah, a labyrinth of lies is a really good way to have phrased it, which the later detectives in this case would use. So during his time in Australia, Jesse completely cut off communication with his family back in New Zealand. He worked in various bars and nightclubs around the Sydney area and along the Gold Coast for the next few years. Here, he would introduce himself to various women he worked with and female customers with elaborate backstories in an effort to befriend them and bring them back to his apartment. A lot of these women and young girls began to notice a pattern with Jesse. His stories kept changing and he appeared to become a totally different person after he had consumed alcohol. Jesse told one young woman that he drove a $900,000 BMW and lived in a $1.3 million house in Sydney. And when he was questioned about how he was able to afford this whilst working behind a bar, he said that actually my family are successful restaurateurs in Australia and New Zealand, and I'm doing market research working at this bar. We're looking to buy a few more bars and restaurants in Sydney and Auckland. And yeah, he said, basically, I'm here to bartend, but I'm also sort of got my ear to the ground doing a bit of a recon.
I always fascinate when people are like habitual liars, how the things they make up and the stories they go down. Because I mean, that is not too like unbelievable. I mean, the 900,000 BMW seems excessive, but and the 1.3 million dollar house in Sydney, to be fair, Sydney's places just cost so much money, so that's not too wild. But him saying he did market research is like, that's, I mean, admirable if you're going that far to do the research, but if you own that many, yeah, mad.
He was like trying to, what's that show? It's like Secret CEO or whatever.
Undercover Boss,
yeah.
Secret CEO sounds quite good.
I'm actually own this place. Yeah, I mean, he's thinking on his feet perhaps in this situation, but yeah, to make these claims and then for someone to quickly go, okay, well, if you drive that and you live there, why are you here? Well, just research.
Can I see a car? No, because I'm going undercover, I haven't parked out the front, so it's just at the house. Oh, can I see the house? Nah.
That's undercover too.
Yeah. I'm actually leaving the shit flat at the moment just because I really like a method.
So all this time, his actual family, and this is predominantly coming from his paternal grandfather, put forward the suggestion that Jesse had actually gotten a work colleague pregnant whilst working in Sydney, and that the family were contacted by a young woman with a photo of a baby boy who was, quote, identical to Jesse. So while spreading various stories about his wealth and excellent living conditions, it turns out that Jesse was in fact struggling to pay the rent for his $170 a week house share. Now, his room at this point in the house, it reminded me, Tom, you remember when you first moved to London? Not to link you to this guy whatsoever, but his room, he got the best rate because his room was the smallest in the house that he shared with other young professionals. So he basically had a bed and a small wardrobe in it. Yeah. But it sounds like your room was quite cute, I remember. Cozy.
I was subletting and I had the tiniest room, but the house was really nice and big. And yeah, everyone else around me had a lot more money, but I had this tiny little room. But I was quite content with it because you got the house.
The house and the location were great. Great.
They were
great. we were in Chelsea. It wasn't Chelsea. Was it?
It wasn't. It was near Hammersmith. Yeah.
Very nice though. So yeah, he got the smallest room and the smallest amount of rent he had to pay, but he would still complain about this. And again, this linking to his story that he's a millionaire driving a nice BMW. Again, lots of questions about this. Apparently, Jesse would regularly lie and get into heated arguments with these new housemates who often had to contact their landlord to complain about him, eventually resulting in him being removed from the property. One anonymous female flatmate who came into contact with Jesse said the following.
It didn't take long to realise he was not who he said he was, and that nothing he said was true. I was on a late shift and came home around 11 PM. My flatmate messaged me when she heard me arrive home and asked me to come to her room. I went in and saw her, and she had a knife in her bed. I asked what had happened. She told me Jesse had been drinking and that she felt uncomfortable around him.
Now that is pretty wild if you feel that threatened by a housemate, you've brought a knife into your bed, so it just goes to show how uncomfortable he is making people feel.
Yeah, absolutely. So once this housemate told the friend about what had happened, the rest of the housemates got together to discuss basically how they could get rid of Jesse without making him angry or causing any kind of potential physical retaliation from him. So they said the following about this.
We were talking about the situation and agreed that we were going to ask him to leave the next day. The thought was scary because we didn't want to confront him or for him to get angry. However, he came out of his room with a bag slung over his shoulder and a sad look on his face, and he said his mum had just died and he had to urgently go to Sydney. The whole thing was awkward. We knew straight away he was full of shit. Good. But we were happy at the thought he would be gone for a few days. After that, we changed the locks and issued his notice. Weeks later, some of the girls claimed that he could smell his aftershave by the windows.
Oh, I don't like that.
I mean, there's lingering back there. Yeah. Obviously, he's not just him being annoying and leaving that dirty washing in the sink. He's actually making the girls feel threatened. So the idea that he might not be, because you're still going to have in the back of your head, he might not be lying there, his mum's just died. And if you have a little bit in your head where you think he might not be lying, changing the locks when he comes back, kick a man when he's down. But then the aftershave lingering that is horrible.
Terrifying.
It makes me think he must wear it a lot.
Yes, really distinctive.
Yeah.
The last couple of nights I've been in the house on my own, and about 2 AM, I just heard someone, you know, that a certain type of phone where the text message is like, blah, 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 blah.
Oh, yeah, that one, yeah.
Android. That's it, yes. I don't know where I got blur from.
Blur,
James Bond's outside. Blur, blur. That went off, and it was right by the front of my house, and it was about 3 a.m.
Ooh, which now?
Yeah, so some Android user is away.
Texting outside your house.
Yeah. Well, I haven't got I haven't paid for the subscription, but I need to. Yeah. Probably not as spooky as their situation. I'm not trying to outdo them, but just, yeah, Android in the middle of the night. Scary. Yeah, hearing that when you're asleep and you don't own an Android is fucking scary.
Is quite scary, actually. I'd love for Dan just to sit out your window, just whistling.
Yeah.
It is. Did the dogs not react to it?
There's also neighbouring cats. There's the fucking number 3 black cats that a distant neighbour owns, and they drink out of my bird bath at the front of the house, and it really rattles the dogs. They can always tell when they're there. So they do go flying out for that, but they've not noticed the Android user, which makes me even more scared.
A spooky little street.
Yeah, it's a bit, yeah. I'll keep
and there's
posted.
a well, and just hear someone crying at the bottom of it.
Oh, yeah, slow and reverb.
A few months later, another landlord had a similar experience with Jesse. This time, when he hadn't paid his rent for the second month in a row, the landlord challenged Jesse about it. He informed the man that he was a newly signed professional softball player for a team called Black Sox back in New Zealand, and that he would have his first quarterly paycheck the following week. Quite a big commute, surely.
Yeah, big
I don't know
commute.
how regularly you play, but...
Quarterly paycheck as well. Like, that's interesting.
The lies continued for another 8 weeks, and the very patient landlord decided to contact the Black Sox management, who, unsurprisingly, had never heard of Jesse Kempson. That is, I respect that landlord going, I'm actually going to go straight to the top. By the time the landlord went to confront Jesse, together with the support of the local police, Jesse had moved out of the building, having not paid for almost 4 months of rent. Oh, skinflint. That's what
Just
I'm
a
saying.
couple of black socks just rustling in the wind. The fucking black sock guy got me.
On top of this, one former housemate also claims that Jessie stole money from her bedroom on a regular basis. She eventually had to start keeping all of her cash on her at all times. Maybe use a bank. Other people that lived in the same building found Jesse to be odd, untrustworthy, awkward, and irritating. Some of them claimed that he had told them he had a bachelor's degree in international law and was originally from a family of millionaires. I'm originally from a family of millionaires. Whilst he told others that he had contacts within Immigration New Zealand, was a gang member turned police informant, that his mother had tried to murder him several times as a child, that he was at one point dying of cancer, and that he had a cousin that was a rugby player for the All Blacks.
I do like the sort of gang member termed police informant. I thought that was like a slightly more harmless one of the lies, but still a lie. But yeah.
I think there's still an air there of, I'm still dangerous.
Yeah.
And I know people.
And don't tell me anything I shouldn't hear, because
Yeah,
I
but
will.
the international law one's interesting as well. But yeah. I mean, because we all know someone who just does that, who lies about absolutely everything. You just love the idea of just calling them out and just seeing exactly where they would go. But in 2017, aged 25, for reasons that are not totally clear, Jesse abruptly left Australia and returned to New Zealand, taking up residence in a boarding house in Auckland. This is where the rumours of him getting a young lady pregnant have come from. Here he would start working odd jobs at local bars, as well as working cash-in-hand jobs as a labourer on various construction sites. He would now drink more alcohol than ever before, and this in turn would cause him to lash out and become highly aggressive to those who knew him. His appearance started to become increasingly more dishevelled, and he would struggle to befriend females in person. As a result, he downloaded and started heavily using a number of different dating apps, predominantly Tinder.
So after growing tired of living in the boarding house, Jesse then applied to live in a flat share in central Auckland via an advert that he saw on Facebook. He arrived at the house in a full suit and impressed his prospective housemates. When they approved him, the first thing that he did was go out and buy expensive bed linen. He followed a similar pattern of convincing all of his new housemates that he came from a family of millionaire restaurateurs and that his father was currently opening a restaurant in Auckland. The housemates then noticed that the only time they would see him was either when he was leaving the house in the morning dressed in a full suit, or arriving in the evenings together with Tinder dates that he was bringing home. One of the former housemates recalled the following.
We didn't like it. It was like having strangers in your home all the time. I didn't want to have my jewellery lying around when there were random girls coming into my house. He kept saying he was going to these restaurant meetings, but we reckon he was going to claim his benefits and job seeker meetings. He had a lot of stories that very quickly stopped making sense, but if you would ever question his stories, he would become incredibly defensive. He was so full of shit. He dressed in suits every day and went somewhere, probably just down the road. We could see straight through him. He was chatty and easy to live with, but then he started lying so much and became violent.
So, I mean, yeah, most of the pictures you see of Jesse, and even when he turned up to his interrogation, he's wearing a waistcoat.
Big waistcoat.
Looks like a magician, yeah.
Or Southgate.
But yes. But yeah, he was very much about kind of living this life to convince. I guess the suits must be to go along with the millionaire story, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just one of those classic things, someone not having a job and then them leaving the house for the day. That's the most believable way. If you're left every day not wearing casuals. I don't know, it's a strange one. But it's interesting that they're saying that he's easy to live with compared to the other ones. Just the line, and yeah, becoming violent again. Yeah. Not a good trait or a good sign.
Did I ever tell you my awkward waistcoat story about when I was a kid?
No, you didn't.
I've not brought this up.
No.
So probably about 7 or 8, playing football in the front garden with my brother, just in shorts and a t-shirt. And this family started moving in the house. And we were number 5, and they were moving into number 2. And yeah, actually, I'm quite young at this point. And there was a young girl moving into the house, probably a similar age. So saw her, went into my house, went upstairs, put a waistcoat on that my parents had got me to, must have been for a wedding or something. It was one of those really like tweed waistcoats, and I just put it over the top of my shirt and shorts, went back outside and started playing football with my brother, and then just kept looking over like that.
Just to look quite cool and smart.
I thought, this will really impress her.
Did it work?
No, didn't work. So, waistcoats aren't the be all and end all, guys. You can you can be I'm trying to go back to that, living in an amazing place, having a shit time. You could be wearing a waistcoat and having a shit time, or you can be
just picturing Angela's ashes, the kind of black and white going.
Yeah. I'm not that old, but
easier times back then, Ben?
Yes, yeah. Before the apps, you had to put a waistcoat on and play football.
Before running water.
Okay.
God.
Jesse would only remain in this house share for a few months. Apparently, one night he came home alone after a Tinder date and started drinking alone in the kitchen without saying anything. An hour or so went by, and then he smashed a bar stool over the kitchen counter. Many of the housemates were so frightened by this that they slept with a knife beneath their pillow, whilst Jesse was asked to leave by the landlord the following month after he started regularly complaining about the price of his rent and the cost of living crisis, which the group felt was very strange given that he was a millionaire. The former housemate continued.
He made me feel real uncomfortable. He had a switch. He had a short fuse. He had so many different personalities. None of them could hold his liquor. He could either be the emotional Jesse, the angry Jesse, where just one small thing would set him off, the strange, awkward Jesse, and then the Jesse that would just take off and disappear without saying a word.
It soon became clear that Jesse was lying to his employers, was lying to his colleagues, was lying to any girls that he spoke with online or was dating in person, and was lying to his housemates. He would later lie to a young lady by the name of Grace Millane, whilst also lying to the police teams that later investigated her murder.
Grace Emmy Rose Millane was born on the 2nd of December 1996 in the town of Brentwood, Essex. She was the third child and only daughter born to David and Gillian Millane, having 2 older brothers, Declan and Michael. Grace was described by her family as a kind, confident, talented and gregarious girl with a heart of gold. She had a love for sports, making art and music, and being an active member of the school's hockey team. Grace later went on to attend the University of Lincoln, where she got a degree in marketing and advertising. After graduating, Grace used her savings to go on a long-awaited backpacking trip during her gap year, but she refused to start her trip of a lifetime before having her specially long brown hair cut and donating her hair to the Little Princess Trust, a charity that makes wigs for children who have lost their hair as a result of cancer.
So you have one side of the world, Jesse Kempson lying about having cancer and recovering, to then this amazing person cutting her hair and donating it to a charity supporting children with cancer.
Why don't you do it then?
I've done it actually. I've done Brave the Shave.
Do you donate it?
I think it's the...
When did you do that?
About £2,000 or £3,000 for it.
What? $3,000?
Yeah, because it was
just
long.
you?
It was yeah, it was at work. 2017 must have been.
Well done,
no,
mate.
it would have been after 2018. Yeah.
2018.
Yeah.
Ben Carter. Brave the Shave.
Yeah, I don't know if it made the news, but...
Local news, maybe.
Local man shits in charity envelope and gives it to...
Please continue that story.
Macmillan it was for.
Where did you shave?
In the office.
I want to say a big thank you to this week's sponsor, Manscaped.
But yeah, I mean, with Grace, everything that you read and hear about her is that she was this amazing person that did so much for so many people. I always find this quite unsettling because we had this in like, do you remember our North Sentinel Island, the John Allen Chow episodes? So her Insta pages are still active. She's got an art page where it shows all of her artwork, then her personal page, which show all of her travels to a point, to a certain date. And I just always find that really, it hurts my heart seeing the social media pages of people that have passed.
Yeah, it's a strange one, isn't it? Because I think like it's probably quite nice for family and friends to have that, like a place to go and, you know, remember nice memories. But yeah, it's when you start thinking about the millions of people that must have Facebook accounts who've passed away.
Yeah.
And then they talk about possibly AI having a thing where they'll make it so they continue posting.
Oh, really?
Really?
Yeah, that's been mentioned before.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
Don't like that.
No.
No.
What would be the... Is that a comfort thing? Is that a...
I don't know. I honestly don't know.
A grief thing?
It's like a Black Mirror episode, isn't it?
2120. Is Ben Carter still posting about Creed? Does anyone need that?
When you are with me.
Creed the touring again. It's an interesting one. Yeah, I can understand why it's sad to see, but hopefully it brings some form of comfort. I'm sure there's some service where if a family member's passed away, and you could probably request for it to be taken down. Probably.
Yeah, you can get, there's a word, not archived, but you can get them in memoriam. I'm sure that's happened. They can be made in memoriam or something like that, where they remove certain things and still show certain things.
It is strange though, isn't it? Because it's like literally you're kind of, because social media is always active, you can always go back to the point of where it stopped.
Yes.
Whereas without social media, you wouldn't have that. You could just say goodbye to that person, but you can always, I don't know, I find it a bit strange.
Yeah.
I think it's because you can see, obviously we're going to talk about her travels. You can see Grace going to South America. You can see her arriving in New Zealand, making all these friends, massive smile on her face. And it's just so, that's why I was keen to start with Jesse's background to show what an absolute monster this person was going into the meeting, and then her having this completely different impression of him based on what he showed her that night, you know, the version of himself that he showed her. And that's the thing, you know, she found him charming, she found him attractive. A lot of, you know, he had a lot of people that went on dates and met him and, you know, went back to his wherever his living, you know, place was at that time. So he could clearly, you know, charm people and win people over, but it was just a lot of darkness within this person.
Grace left her family home in Wickford, Essex and made her way to South America, where she spent the following 6 weeks travelling around Peru, Chile and Patagonia, where she would share many photos of her adventures with her family and friends. According to her father, despite their initial fears of her travelling alone, they were reassured by the regular contact they had with their daughter.
She was savvy about people in general, and she was not overly trusting of people, but not overly shy. She was meticulous about her planning. She was going to be away for a year with a plan to be back in the UK in June 2019, where she had a wedding in the family. We had heard from Grace virtually every day. She enjoyed sharing her adventures with us. She was in good spirits. I did not know specifically Grace was dating online. I don't believe children tell their parents everything, and nor should they necessarily. But concerns grew when we did not hear from her on her 22nd birthday.
The reason for the lack of contact on her birthday was because Grace's path had unfortunately crossed with Jesse Kempson's in the most callous and despicable of ways. And it's here that we move to the timeline of the Tinder killer.
The morning of December 1st, 2018. Having spent the last 10 days exploring the North Island of New Zealand, 21-year-old British backpacker Grace Millane arranges to go on a date with 26-year-old New Zealand national Jesse Kempson. The pair, having matched on Tinder the day prior, arranged to meet at Sky City later that evening, a popular entertainment complex in the heart of the city. Grace lets Jesse know that it's her birthday tomorrow, and Jesse is eager to show her some of the best spots in the city so the pair can celebrate. Grace then spends the morning, as well as the afternoon, taking in the sights of the city and preparing to celebrate her 22nd birthday, including going on the city's iconic Sky Tower.
So yeah, as Tom said earlier, she was obviously travelling the world alone. It's not at all unusual for someone to befriend locals in the area. I mean, it's not even, I'm sure at one point there was apps like similar to dating apps, but friend apps, right?
Even I think on dating apps, they have a
you can have friendship ones, looking for friendship, companionship, whatever.
Yeah, you can on dating apps, you can do, there's different settings on there that you can do, basically search for local friends. I think everyone can relate to it. The older you get, it's slightly more difficult making friends or everything like that, but it's, you know, in a place where it's not your local town, it's, you know, nice to have a local show you the cooler sites and stuff like that.
Yeah.
My brother, even when he lived in Auckland, him and his partner joined like a local friends thing, and then they found some friends, and now I do lots of travelling around with them. So
That's
it can definitely work, yeah.
Well, yeah, so I mean, so she's befriended people in South America. She's now in New Zealand. She's spent, 11 days now exploring the North Island by herself, making different friends. But yeah, there's the Kiwi experience, which is what I did. And you can it's a hop on, hop off bus going around both islands. And you can just get on, get off wherever you want. So people go their separate ways at multiple points. She's probably now alone. And obviously her birthday's coming up, not want to be alone on her birthday. And the chat logs as well from Tinder, by the way, they match the day before. So this chat was going on November 30th, and basically it was coming up to the weekend. Her birthday would have been on the 2nd of December. And he's very kind of pushy with the chat, I would say. So it starts with him saying, "Hey Grace, how are you? Much planned for your weekend." And then like an upside down smiley face, which is, never know how to interpret that. She replies, "Hey, I'm good, thanks. It's actually my birthday tomorrow, but I have no plans." He replies, "Oh shit, happy birthday for tomorrow. Much planned this evening then." She says, "Haha, thank you, I haven't." So Jesse then goes, "Maybe we could get a drink." She replies, "Yeah, maybe." He replies, "Maybe yes," with a monkey emoji covering their eyes, the cheeky monkey. She replies, "Convince me," tongue out. He replies, "Ha ha ha, well my shout, ha ha," laugh emoji, monkey emoji.
It's a lot of emojis.
She replies, "What?" ? He replies, "I will buy the drinks, my shout." She said, "I haven't said yes yet." And then he replies, "You haven't said no either," smiley face. "So what's it going to take to make this happen then?"
I wasn't single in the world of dating apps or when they really came into prominence, but that seems relatively harmless. I know people saying it's forceful, but I think that's forceful when you know the rest of the context of the whole night. But the kind of like, "I haven't said yes yet," if you read it in a certain tone, yeah. But I don't think it's anything to be like, "Oh my God," immediately you can see red flags straight away from that message. She should have known better because of this. I think it's like, you know, she hadn't said no. He asked her again, and yeah.
Yeah, and again, to go back to a lot of, as we said, there's a lot of negative commentary on certain YouTube videos about Grace as a person, which is disgusting. And she's not. She's still saying, "I haven't said yes yet. Where would we go? What would we do?" She hasn't even got to know this person at this point, but he was fairly persistent in saying, "I know a great spot," and he could convince her he knew a great Mexican place. He knows where all the best cocktail bars are. There's this place called Sky City. You know, it's like a sort of shopping center, I suppose. There's a casino there and a load of bars and restaurants. So she didn't want to be alone on her birthday. He's obviously come across as a bit of an expert on the city and eventually agrees.
But a lot of emojis in there.
Yes, yeah.
Early evening. Grace leaves her hostel, Base Backpackers Auckland, and makes her way towards the Sky City complex. Grace is her usual excitable and friendly self, whilst it is not clear exactly what's going through Jesse's mind at this point. Grace stops briefly to take a photograph of a Christmas tree, which she sends to her family. Sadly, this would be the last time that her family would hear from her. For some context, Jesse had an extensive history of dating people we met on dating apps. Obviously, hindsight is a wonderful thing, but here are some of the statements made by other women he had met and subsequently been unmatched with or blocked by on dating apps in the year prior.
So here are 3 different statements from 3 different women that he met over the past year or so. This is the first one. Early on in the date, he made unusual comments about our future and seeing me in a wedding dress, saying how lucky he was to be on a date with me. Later, he flipped and became angry at me for texting my friend. I text her, "I'm a tiny bit worried. I'm in his car and he got angry about me messaging you." Jesse was later found guilty of raping this individual, who was another British tourist, in a motel room.
So this is a second account from someone else from a dating app. He told me he had just moved to Auckland from Sydney, where his family owned a beachfront property on the North Shore. He said that he had a traumatic start to life and told me his mother tried to kill him as a child. He also claimed to have been adopted by a wealthy Sydney man, and claimed he was a benefactor of a large amount of money tied up in a trust. He then didn't pay for our food because he said his family's accounts had been frozen by a cyber attack. Jesse was later convicted of sexually violating, assaulting and threatening to kill this woman after it was proven he held a butcher's knife to her throat.
And a third separate statement reads, "On our third date, I invited him over to my place to meet some of my friends and have some drinks with them. At one point in the evening, he walked in on me whilst in the bathroom. He asked me if my friends liked him. He looked like he was going to cry."
It's so fucking...
Jesse, I'm shitting.
So weird.
He's a fucking weirdo.
Do they like me? Jesse, I'm on the toilet. Okay.
He was rude to my friends, bragging about how expensive his watch was, and saying his family owned $50 million worth of property in Auckland. Eventually, I asked him to leave and retreated to my bedroom. He shouted up to me, in front of my friends, "You're a dog, I'm going to ruin you." He lunged at one of my female friends when she was picking up his car keys to try and stop him driving home drunk. He then apologised to me, saying his grandmother just passed away. Fuck me. He only left after a male friend intervened.
So, I mean, that third date couldn't have gone much more terribly.
No. I mean, it's a big step, because I mean, that's a third date, isn't it? So it's a big step, like when you invite your partner to meet your friends.
Yep.
And yeah, lunging at one of them, calling you a dog, walking in you in the toilet. Yeah, lots of red flags there. Dan, there's actually, we did a bit of a test here. One of these is actually an account from a date that Ben went on. Which one do you think it is?
Third one, surely.
Yeah, all bad. All bad.
All bad.
Very bad.
So obviously Grace, and to an extent the police and general public, had no idea about this flurry of awful actions and behaviours regarding Jesse. Regardless of this, at 5:45 p.m. and for the next 3 hours, Grace and Jesse met in person at the lobby of Sky City and start drinking at various bars in the city centre. They then go for dinner at Andy's Burger and Bar. The pair then move to the Mexican Cafe Bar and then over to the Bluestone Room, where it's shown on, again, as Tom said, there's so much surveillance and CCTV footage here. It's shown that the pair engage in their first kiss whilst in the Bluestone Room. Then it gets really weird. When Grace goes to the restroom, surveillance footage shows Jesse rummaging through her bag. And it's not just like a quick peek in the bag, which is, again, not okay.
Yeah, it's not okay still, Ben.
Still not okay, thoroughly not okay.
Please.
It is a full-on dig through that bag, having a good look. And I do
a ransack.
It's a ransacking of the bag. And there's other people, you know, they're in a kind of a crowded space as well. They're sitting at a table, but there are other people that can obviously see him do this. It's, really, really weird. But at the same time, she's not aware of this happening. From there, they continue drinking and moving from bar to bar. They're captured on CCTV, talking, enjoying each other's company. They're walking arm in arm. He's walking with his arm over her shoulder throughout the evening. And Grace also updated her Facebook profile picture during this time, which showed Jesse commenting, "Beautiful, very radiant," with the upside down smiley again.
Yeah, the upside down smiley.
It's like the upside down smiley. Yeah, I always thought it was sarcastic.
I think it's more like a not ideal, like if they're still not here, upside down smiley, like but a bit annoyed. So I don't get it in that context whatsoever.
Perhaps he's meaning it head over heels.
That's cute, Dan. That's a cute way
romantic.
to look at it. Yeah.
Or he's slightly annoyed, like he was before, about that friend being on the phone. Perhaps it's like a very radiant, but you're with me. Let's concentrate.
Yeah, that works.
So whilst all of this is happening, Grace messages her good friend Amina Ashcroft, who was on holiday in Dubai at the time. Amina recalled the following.
"I was a bit concerned, but I didn't show Grace that I was. I felt something was weird, that she was going on a date with a manager of an oil company. However, she said that the date was going really good. I could tell she was drunk because she kept making typos and telling me how much she loved and missed me. She then said, literally, I click with him so well, before then saying goodbye and telling me she would let me know how she got on tomorrow."
At 9:41 p.m, the pair leave the bar and walk across the laneways towards the CityLife Auckland, where Jesse was living. Grace and Jesse then get in an elevator before going up to the third floor together and exiting the elevator. This is the last time that Grace is ever seen alive. Believed to be late night December 1st through to the early hours of December 2nd. Inside Jesse's hotel room, the situation escalates. Jesse would later claim that his date with Grace simply ended and the pair then went their separate ways. However, when CCTV contradicted his story, he would change his timeline of events to suggest that Grace had died while with him in the hotel room, but claimed a case of consensual rough sex gone badly wrong. Evidence suggests that Jesse had strangled Grace deliberately and with great force.
So the other thing that was of concern to people when Jesse will eventually come under the spotlight a bit is that the day before, or in the days before he met Grace, he made the following post on his Facebook, which said, "Hey everyone, I just wanted to touch base with you all. I've made a lot of bad decisions in my life so far that I'm not proud of, some of which have greatly affected others. I firstly want to extend my most sincere apologies for this. I've done a lot of reflection over time and have narrowed down the cause of it all, and with that being said, I believe you all deserve to know. My clear arrogance and selfishness has truly affected the relationship I have with people in my personal life. I know that I was growing up emotionally, mentally. When we grow up, we make mistakes. That's how we improve. In the exam of life, you can't retest yourself with the same question paper. But with that being said, we can change how we treat each other, and over time I've learned that every action has a reaction, but I've also learned how much compassion we all have as people. I've recently been diagnosed with severe anxiety and currently take medication to keep this under control. Putting all that aside, I just want anyone who I've hurt or let down to know I'm truly sorry from the bottom of my heart."
And what's your thoughts on that, Ben?
I don't know. There's obviously something that's caused him to do a bit of self-reflection in the days prior to meeting Grace. That we'll go on to talk about other crimes that he was later convicted of in the build-up to this time. But it reads as though something has caused him to do a little bit of, introspective thinking. And he's not really pinpointed it. As he said, he found he's kind of pinpointing everything on his anxiety a bit there. But I think it's a mixture of his upbringing. He probably was an alcoholic, but from what we know, and he's just developed some terrible traits and behaviours. But I feel like there would maybe be something to spark him wanting to share that.
There's also a thing of people posting that kind of thing so publicly and on that kind of platform, whether or not they're wanting people to then feel sorry for them, contact them, reach out to them, give them attention, or if it is an honest, innocent, taking responsibility. It's you do get people on your timeline who post a lot about things which you think maybe you shouldn't talk about that here.
Yeah,
but,
we've talked about it before. He would very much be the type of person to check in at hospital on Facebook,
or checking he's safe when Notre Dame burned down. 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. December 2nd, 2018. Despite Grace's now deceased body being in the room with him, Jesse remains in the room for at least the next 4 hours. He proceeds to take photos of her body and is believed to watch pornography on his phone. He then makes the following internet searches on his phone: rigor mortis, extra large bags near me, carpet cleaner, hot as fire, Waitakere Rangers. Apologies if the pronunciation there is wrong. The final search would actually become the young woman's makeshift gravesite. I mean, this is 2018. And I know we've done a lot of cases before where people maybe don't understand how far technology goes and stuff like that, but he feels very brash with his next movements and his next searches, and basically giving the police a lot of things to work with here.
Yeah, I mean, even him, as we go on to with the interrogation, telling police, we went our separate ways, not realising that obviously there is so much surveillance in the hotel he was staying in, the lobby, the elevator, so we'll get to that, but he seems a bit dim with his movements here.
Binks energy.
So 8 a.m. to 10:42 a.m. on December 2nd. Jesse leaves his hotel room, placing a do not disturb sign on the door handle. He then heads to a nearby store where he purchases an extra large suitcase as well as cleaning products. He then takes a taxi to a car rental company where he rents a car, and during the afternoon he Google searches on his phone flesh-eating birds and are there vultures in New Zealand?
Flesh-eating birds, great metal band name.
Yes. Are there vultures in New Zealand? Not so much.
More ska band.
It is. He is racking up these very dodgy searches. He then takes the suitcase up to the room via the same elevator he had previously shared with Grace, places her body into it, and leaves it in his room whilst he goes to rent an industrial carpet cleaner. I think it was a company, Carpet Right or something like that. Conflicting stories here, because some say he goes to a company and rents this carpet cleaner, like this industrial carpet cleaner. Others say that he went down to the hotel lobby and spoke to them, explained he had a red wine spill and wanted to clean it himself, and they lent him the industrial carpet cleaner. So it's whichever one of those two stories. But it's quite, it's like a pressure washer sort of size thing. He then comes back and cleans up his room using that particular carpet cleaner before returning it. And then he proceeds to go on yet another Tinder date. So during this Tinder date, which he does whilst Grace's body is still sitting in a suitcase in his hotel room, the woman, who has since remained anonymous, asked Jesse what he had been up to that day. She recalled the following.
He said he'd been trying to find a really large duffel bag. but he'd been struggling to find one big enough for sports gear. He said, "It's crazy how guys can make one wrong move and go to jail for the rest of their life." He also said he'd heard of, or knew of, a guy who had asked his girlfriend to have rough sex with him involving strangulation or suffocation, and that it had gone wrong and she'd died during the process, and he tried to revive her, but he couldn't be revived and she died and he got done for manslaughter. He said that the police were having a really rough time right now, especially in the Waitakeries, because a lot of bodies are going missing out there and it's a large area. He said police dogs can only smell bodies buried more than 4 feet under. Eventually, I changed the subject because it was getting really uncomfortable.
Yeah, so this is incredibly bizarre. Not only the fact that he's got a body sat in his hotel room and he's out now, potentially trying to lure another victim, but the fact that he's having this conversation. I think a lot of this conversation point was framed in the fact that he claimed to have a friend who was high up in the police, and this was an investigation that they were working on. But it's just so weird. And also that quote about police dogs can only smell bodies buried more than 4 feet under. I feel like that surely that's got to be less than 4 feet under. I don't want to Google it because then I'm going to have knocks on my door.
Yeah, and you've got a lot to hide, so...
Oh, God, I'm not clicking any of these links. There's so many weird... Oh.
Bookmark.
Generally speaking, it's saying that cadaver dogs can smell things up to 40 feet underground and as much as 80 feet underwater.
That is wild.
Dogs can smell through concrete, cement, bricks, dirt, clay, so 6 feet in dirt isn't going to block the smell of a human. If you bury a human standing up, the top of that person would now be less than 6 feet, and a dog could very easily smell the person. If you wanted to make... Why are people on Reddit talking about this?
Why are you burying someone standing up?
Yeah, as well, that's
really
that's not efficient, is it? If you wanted to make the top 6 foot tall person's head was 6 foot underground, it would be a digger hole that was 12 feet deep. Obviously, with the narrowness of this body, it sounds like a nightmare to me. There's some interesting people on Reddit.
Yeah, man.
But they can smell. They can smell. But I mean, yeah, to go back to Jesse, imagine what's going through the mind of this woman that he's now dating, and all he's talking about is, I need to find a duffel bag. My friends are working on this case where someone died during, rough sex and got strangled, and he's probably going to get done with manslaughter and this and that. He's basically relaying his possible outcomes during this date.
Again, he's obviously, I think, going for a bit of an episode, isn't he, in terms of just like a lot of things he said and doing and acting very erratically. And, his meds mixed with alcohol could be, part of the reason, like we said. But yeah, again, just absolutely giving the police a, softball for them to absolutely be able to nail him for this case.
I remember seeing the footage of him in the back of the taxi on the way to rent a car, and he looks so nervous, so agitated. He's rubbing his face a lot, looking out the window, like blinking heavily. And then you go from that to then seeing him sitting in a bar, hugging this woman and just chatting, having drinks with her casually. It's just, I think he's an absolute sociopath.
Yeah, I mean, he's a man that's in his own stories has worn many hats in terms of different things, being an oil manager, being a, tycoon and all this other stuff. So I think he can probably slip into characters quite easily. And the rare moments when you see him when he's not aware he's being watched is when you see the true kind of like nervous wreck that he is. Yeah, absolutely.
I'm sure we'll talk about this later, but the one positive out of this is how well New Zealand has a CCTV infrastructure in place. A lot of cameras and high resolution.
And the ones that move around. Yeah, you see, that was well good.
Like the 360 ones. It's super impressive.
Yeah, I know a lot of people probably will hate the fact that that's the case and think it's people's personal liberty and privacy being, but this is a prime example of if you're not doing anything weird, you're fine.
Exactly. 9:26 p.m, almost 24 hours after bringing Grace back to his room. Jesse returns to his hotel room where he uses a luggage cart to transport the suitcase containing Grace's body to his rental car. He then drives the rental car 21 miles, or 40 minutes, west to Waitakere Ranges, stopping at a hardware shop along the way to buy a shovel. He then buries Grace's body, still inside the suitcase, on the edge of a road called Scenic Drive. December 5th. Grace Millane is officially reported missing after her family back home in the UK becomes concerned when they did not hear from her on her birthday 3 days ago and had not received any of their typical daily updates from her. Auckland police launched an investigation and begin reviewing CCTV footage, tracing her last known movements. Police initially said that there was no evidence of foul play.
So, yeah, I mean, there's a couple things here. So firstly, the family, although they typically heard, they had daily photos or she'd update her social media of her travels, they still, in the back of their mind, although there's been a 3-day period here, they still thought, well, maybe she's, had a bit too much to drink. She's gone out and had a party. She's probably with friends and, not had a chance to come back to us. And that's why, they've not been able to raise the alarm, perhaps as quickly. So her parents were still in the hopes that, maybe she's just got a really bad hangover. She's going to get back in touch with us. Maybe she's lost her phone and not been able to get on the internet. That the typical type of things that, probably go through most parents' head when they don't get an update from their child, within the expected time. I mean, the fact that it's her birthday as well and she's not replied has probably made them obviously slightly more concerned. And then with Auckland police, they had to review hundreds of thousands of hours of CCTV footage. And yeah, as Dan and Tom have both said, it's so well documented and there's so many different cameras. The technology is fantastic in that it can move and it can sort of pan and capture sort of 360 angles as well. So there's a lot from this case that they will now see, and that then once they find Grace, they start to then piece together locations using different cameras. And there's so much footage from this case.
December 6th, police release a public appeal for information regarding Grace's whereabouts. The investigation quickly focuses on Jesse Kempson after they trace her movements to the CityLife Hotel. As a result, Jesse is identified as the last person to have seen Grace alive. So there's actually CCTV footage of when Jesse kind of realises that the police are onto him. He basically is walking outside the hotel. You can see he looks in, clocks the police at the reception, and then just slowly starts walking away. You just think it's very odd to see every stage of this. Like every stage, you see the police there, he's seeing them, then they just chase him down the road, and then they've got him. December 7th, Jesse is brought in for questioning. Initially, he denies any involvement in Grace's disappearance, saying the pair went their separate ways after the date, but later changes his story after being confronted with the CCTV footage, as well as the car rental footage and evidence that he purchased the shovel.
So they found him obviously going and buying the shovel from a hardware store on the way to Waitakere, but they couldn't find the shovel. There was no trace of the shovel. So there was a big public search in the area for a shovel. Eventually they found it and were able to pin that back on Jesse as well. Yeah,
I think one thing that's really fascinating with this case as well is in the interrogation, the policeman handles it so well. He basically lets Jesse tie himself in knots. Jesse says something about catfish. He goes, do you know what catfish is? And then basically spins all this stuff about catfish and people being tricked, and he wanted to make sure he wasn't being tricked, as if he went into this state being a bit nervous himself.
Tell us about Grace. So I was talking to Grace on Tinder. We'd matched on Friday. I saw that we'd matched the next day on Saturday.
Started talking to me about 50 Shades of Grey, which is a sex fantasy movie that's out. We started having sex. At first it was just normal. It was very placid. And then she asked me if we could get into bondage. And then all I remember is falling asleep in the shower. I need to stop. I need to go.
Would you like some fresh air?
Yeah, please. I was in shock. I didn't know what to do. I went downstairs and I was just, I don't know, I was all over the place. I didn't believe what had happened. I was just terrified and scared. I thought that she had gone. I thought she had left.
Pathologist, specialist doctor will perform a post-mortem. Yeah. They're very skilled at establishing people's causes of death. Do you understand that? Yeah. Did you kill Grace Millane?
So yeah, Jesse then goes on to admit that she did in fact pass away in his hotel room. However, he maintains it was an accident during consensual rough sex. Yeah, he goes on to basically say to the policeman about 50 Shades of Grey. and that, you know, she was interested in that, and explains it in detail and stuff like that. Very odd. But the policeman's letting him basically tie himself in knots and basically make it so, you know, put himself there and put himself as being, you know, at the hands of him. Following his interrogation, police obtained a search warrant for his hotel room as well as the rental car. Evidence, including Grace's DNA, is found in multiple parts of the room. Police also used luminol on the carpet to see where the bloodstains were originally, and they could tell from that there was blood on the floor of the hotel room that Jesse was staying in. December 8th, in a press conference, police say that Grace is no longer alive. This is a murder investigation. The following afternoon, at roughly 4 p.m, Jesse takes police to where he buried Grace's body in a shallow grave. Her body is found within the suitcase in a state of decomposition. It was described as being in the fetal position and barely able to fit within the case. And they were able to find the place where he buried her basically through the Google searches as well on his phone, and, you know, able to establish that he would have taken her to that location.
December 11th, Jesse Kempson is formally charged with Grace Millane's murder. His name is initially suppressed for a 20-day period due to New Zealand's legal restrictions, and he is remanded in custody pending trial. News of the crime begins to circulate all over the world, with numerous pieces of CCTV footage later going viral. Several outlets, particularly those in the United Kingdom, chose to publish Kempson's name despite the order from New Zealand. So I think at the time on Google as well as Twitter, there were more than 100,000 mentions of Jesse Kempson shortly before New Zealand tried to start suppressing Jesse's name. There is a huge public outcry for Grace's killer to be publicly named, and it is also revealed that over the course of the following month, the killer entered a plea of not guilty, further ramping up the public outrage. So yeah, there was a lot of anger at the fact that Jesse's name was suppressed from the public, and apparently it was due to, you know, being able to give him a fair trial, and that was the reason they couldn't publicly name him initially.
Until proven guilty, I think with all these things, like, you know, there's numerous people who have been named for things and they've been proven innocent, and it's still affected their life going forward. Amanda Knox, perfect example. So I think that's not such a, you know, problem. I think, but I can understand, you know, especially with the anger and the kind of like people wanting to make it clear that a person's no longer on the street, perhaps wanting it to be named. But I think you've got to be careful with naming people before things are actually fully proven. And that's also why some of the interrogation footage is doctored and you can't actually see his face. It's been made that way, so you know, when it's been leaked, you weren't able to tell exactly who it was. But yeah, it's an interesting one.
November 4th, 2019, so obviously the following year, Jesse Kempson's trial begins at Auckland at the Auckland High Court. The prosecution argues that Jesse deliberately strangled Grace to death, whilst the defence claims that it was an accident during consensual sex. Evidence presented includes Jesse's internet searches, CCTV footage, and testimony from previous women who he had been on dates with, who experienced similarly violent behaviour. And yeah, this is where we got some of those statements from other dates from as we started our timeline. A Crown expert witness, pathologist Simon Stables, testified that a post-mortem examination of Grace's body had found bruising that was consistent with someone who had been restrained and asphyxiated.
They call it the 50 Shades defence, don't they? This has been quite a thing. People were using that in the defence, saying it's a sex game gone wrong, and, you know, because it's quite hard to prove otherwise. But with him having a history with violence to women, it kind of, yeah.
And imagine then having to, well, being Grace's family or friends, loved ones, and having to hear this. So the way that the defence try and paint Grace here is just as bad, if not worse, than all the other horrific people trying to victim blame. The defence team, led by Ian Brookie, argued that Grace's death was the result of a consensual sexual misadventure between her and Jesse. They claimed that Grace had an interest in bondage and sadomasochism and had requested Jesse to choke her during a consensual sex act that tragically went wrong. While they conceded that Jesse attempted to hide and bury her body, they maintained that his actions were driven by panic. They also tried to insinuate the lack of defense wounds as well as the alcohol blood level of Grace post-mortem suggested that it was not premeditated murder and more in line with misadventure. On November 22nd, 2019, after 3 weeks of testimony and evidence, the jury unanimously finds Jesse Kempson guilty of murder after 5 hours of deliberations. Although the CCTV evidence is strong in this case and it's able to pinpoint a thorough timeline, there's still no crystal clear idea of what happened behind the closed door. Obviously, the post-mortem injuries are consistent with someone that's been restrained and asphyxiated, but Jesse and his team were adamant that this was consensual. I think there was lots of other previous behaviours from him, as well as even, I just don't know why, but to go back to him going through her bag.
Just exactly from what you just said there, Ben, there's actually a post on Grace's Insta, which is that it has the line, "Two can keep a secret if one of them is dead," which, in the context of that hotel room and what happened, is very chilling considering what will go on to happen.
Yeah.
No one's going to know exactly what happened apart from Jesse, and you know, Jesse, we know, is very far from telling the truth about most things. I found it astounding the way Jesse spoke to the judge as well, saying they're full of shit, being really kind of aggressive. You saw him kind of click into being aggressive and really just like shouting, and it's just, yeah, he always seemed like on the verge of being angry. So, and it wouldn't be probably too crazy to think that Grace may have, you know, spurned his advances and then he got angry. Like that, you know, it's quite easy to think that could well be likely what happened.
Yeah, I would agree. And I mean, you can their argument that it wasn't premeditated. He obviously the next day he went out and then panicked and got a suitcase and cleaning materials and did all these bizarre Google searches. Like, he'd obviously, the act of trying to cover up and get away with the murder is clear, crystal clear. But it's I would be in line with what you've suggested, Tom. They got in the room, something happened that Grace was not happy with, despite they both obviously had alcohol, a fair bit of alcohol from what you can see on the CCTV footage. I think she's wanted to leave, or something has happened that she wasn't happy with, and he has retaliated in the most horrific
He strikes me
ways.
as the kind of person that buys someone a drink and expects something in return for the said drink.
Yeah, I would agree.
I mean, the thing about the 50 Shades defence as well is it often would lead to manslaughter rather than murder because it's hard to prove either way. But, I mean, luckily in this case, that wasn't to be. His name would not be publicly released until the 22nd of December 2020. However, some international media outlets, like Ben mentioned, chose to publish it in contrary to New Zealand court order. It was also disclosed that Jesse had been convicted of 9 total charges of rape, sexual violation, threatening to kill, and assault in 2 sexual violence trials before a judge in October and November 2020 that were independent of the Grace Millane murder case. That same week, it was reported that taxpayers had paid more than $400,000 in Jesse Kempson's legal aid. As of June 2021, he has exhausted all of his possible legal appeals to overturn his conviction. He will be eligible for parole in 2037.
Which is nuts.
Yeah.
I mean, taxpayers covering those costs is wild for me. I mean, yeah, obviously different countries have different laws and different ways of doing things. But yeah, I mean, the fact that he's already exhausted his appeals in 2037 for a release date does seem really too soon after what he's done.
Yeah, and you'd have to wonder what type of protection he'll be under in prison as well, because I think this case made a lot of people very angry, very, very angry.
Well, you can imagine him just the lies he's spinning in there.
Yeah, yeah.
Actually, I'm actually the I own this prison, so I'm undercover.
I come from a family of millionaire prison owners. Yeah, he's and obviously there's 9 other charges that are horrific in nature. We obviously shared some statements that we were able to get from previous victims of his. It's not an out of character rush of blood situation like perhaps some people have mentioned our Oscar Pistorius episode was. This is a dangerous person.
It does beg the
monster.
question, though, those kind of things being levelled at him, and then he's still able to walk around, and then it gets worse and worse.
Yeah.
There was quite a poignant message from the Prime Minister of New Zealand, Jacinda, at the time. She made a public apology to the family, for Grace's family, on the 10th of December, saying, "On the behalf of New Zealand, I want to apologise. Your daughter should have been safe here, and she wasn't." And even Grace's dad would go on to say, he doesn't want this to put anyone off following their dreams and, going on travelling and anything like that. He said it's really sad, but doesn't want this to be the horror story that prevents anyone else from doing what they want to do.
I had a little look at sort of crime, because we did it. We talked a lot about crime rates in South Africa, like violent and murderous crime rates. And New Zealand is, per 100,000 capita, there are higher murder rates and violent crimes than Australia, but lower than the UK. So it's sort of technically safer than the UK, but more dangerous than Australia.
Surprised me in a way.
Yeah. So as Tom mentioned, obviously the father of Grace, David Millane, obviously was very prominent throughout the investigation, made numerous appearances at press conferences whilst one of the brothers and mother stayed back in the UK. Unfortunately, he passed away after a battle with cancer that was kept, private, just a month before Jesse Kempson's name was revealed from surpassing the suppression order. So, yeah, terribly sad that he obviously didn't get to see justice delivered. And yeah, some people will argue it's quite a lenient sentence in a way.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, very sad. Following Grace's death, her mother, Gillian, as well as her cousin, Hannah, co-founded a charity in her name, which is called Love Grace. And this charity has efforts to raise awareness and help women affected by domestic violence. The charity collects handbags and fills them with toiletries for victims of abuse. And as of December 2023, they had donated 15,600 handbags. So on the topic of dating apps and the sort of beneath the surface dangers of dating apps, according to the BBC, more than 6,000 people have reported offences linked to dating apps between 2017 and 2022. 1 in 5 were sexual offences. The police data is supported by the National Crime Agency's latest statistics from March of 2022.
It's a tricky one with dating apps, obviously. I mean, in terms of policing it, I'm sure that they'll say that they're doing a lot more than they used to be doing on there, but people being banned, and I don't know, do you need ID to sign up to those? Is that a thing?
Good question.
I think you can get verified accounts and unverified accounts. I think there's like, you know, like on like any social media, you get like the little blue tick. I don't know if it's a blue tick still, but
yeah, that would make sense. I mean, because yeah, for exactly this kind of thing, if you're going back through the phone stuff, you know. But
in terms of Tinder, it has got an ID check step which involves uploading government issued identification.
That's good.
That makes sense.
But obviously that doesn't do that much, if you know what I mean, and especially in this case, it's
I think people are wary of dating apps and wary of people that they're talking to. I think in this kind of case, it's just added evidence that they, you know, it's right to be that way. Yeah, it's one of those, as we said at the very, very beginning of this case, she's been shamed essentially for being young, going out, having a bit of fun, and meeting someone that she thought she genuinely connected with on the date. It's her birthday, etc., etc. So I just feel like, you know, it's something that hundreds of thousands of people do with absolutely zero, zero things coming from it. And this is just a sad example of, you know, those bad things can happen. You never know when it's going to happen or who to trust.
Absolutely, and that's that thing we go back to. If it was a guy going home after a first date to going back to a girl's place, he's a lad. He's a, you know, you'd
high five him.
Some people might high five him, you know, but yeah, just really, really sad. And
you'd smell his fingers.
Okay, let's. Yeah, and as we said at the start, it's if the genders were reversed, it would have been a very different reaction to this case, and it's just absolutely horrific that even her family have to deal with, you know, seeing comments like this on her social media or her you know, any video content out there about her articles. It's full of horrific people saying horrific things, which is just completely unfair because she had no idea he was this person, and that's why we chose to go through his background first. It's staggering.
I can understand why there was so much rage as well, because she was obviously such an angel and he was an absolute monster. I mean, it makes me angry that the people like him use the excuse of panic. This sort of thing happens. I just panicked and then chucked her body in a suitcase, and it's like it makes you boils your blood.
Yeah, genuinely, if you were to accidentally do that, you would call an ambulance maybe. To try and, you know, prevent it. I mean, and then you call the police and explain what happened, but the panic system and the way so calculated with it all, and you know, him then talking openly about it to his date the following day, which is wild in itself. I mean, there's so many layers to it, and that's why I just can't understand why people are so, you know, seem to be not defensive of him, but like just so negative towards Grace, because it's like. It's all there. It's all clearly out there what happened and what he did.
That's why I mentioned it's also because we've covered the case recently, but the differences in reaction between him and Oscar Pistorius are quite interesting. Obviously, the situations and methodology are very different, but Oscar called for help. I don't want to sound like I'm painting him as a saint compared to this man, because I don't think he is, but it's the difference in reaction, do you know what I mean, in terms of panic, because both of them are panicking in that situation, but both of them have done very different things.
Yeah, but then Oscar's not Googling porn, is he, straight afterwards?
Yeah.
Panic porn. Yeah. So I panicked.
I had to let off some steam. Very peculiar. But I mean, very, very sad case. It's one that, you know, we like to bring light to some cases that maybe people aren't aware of. like Grace's dad said, you know, it shouldn't be something to deter people from going on travelling, and even travelling by yourself. Some people swear that's the best way to do it. I think, obviously, be cautious, be careful.
Yeah, the whole victim blaming that, you know, people are saying, oh, it's her fault for going to his place. It's her fault for going and staying a night with him. And having that kind of vision, thinking that it's her fault going to a murderer's room or something.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, if it wasn't her, sadly, it would be someone else. I mean, that's the sad case of it. But it could have been someone local from there. It's not a case that she's travelling. It's not a case it was the first date because, you know, he got weird after 3 dates with other people. I think it was just, sadly, he was gonna do this some stage, and just sadly it happened to Grace in this situation.
Yeah, 100%. And that was the case of Jesse Kempson, the murder of Grace Millane, also known as the Tinder killer. Very, very sad one indeed. We will be back next week with yet another episode. We are herring through Series 10. Just 3 to come now, including the audience vote. Right, 9, 10, no, 4. Just 4. So if you aren't already, why not follow us on our socials at Could Murder a Pod, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. That way you can stay in the loop with what cases are coming up and, you know, what we're going to be up to throughout the remainder of the series. Ooh. Honestly, if you're fast asleep, and now I know it's Android as well. I didn't even know what you know, technology was.
Mum, there's a spaceman outside.
And neither of my neighbours that I'm joint to own Androids. So it's just no, we're all iPhone people, you know.
I couldn't tell you any of my neighbours' phones. And if you guys just cannot wait for the next episode, we have over 170 minisodes available over on the website. You can get visual, you can get audio over there. Yeah, lots and lots of minisodes. When I say minisodes, they're not even that many. They're about 40-ish minutes, some even longer. So why not check out the cases over there? And if you're an iPhone user, not like that scary Android user that Ben keeps talking about, why not head over to the Apple Podcast, search I Could Murder a Minisode, and you can subscribe on there and just get the audio versions of it. So on the go, listening to it, having a laugh with your friends. Sorry, I'd pause it. What did you say? He's leaving her? Oh, shame. That kind of banter.
Imagine if that Android user is someone that follows the podcast and they just sort of sat there like, oh.
Yeah, I'm outside. I can smell him. Why has he got so many plastic bottles outside his house? Doesn't matter.
Shall I do a cryptic clue?
Yeah, do a cryptic clue, please, Benjamin.
Benjamin Carter's cryptic clues. Everyone gather round for some clues that can be quite cryptic, but he's going to give them to you anyway. Hope you can figure them out.
Oh, dear. So, next week, episode 9, Core Blimey. Ricardo. Stop it with that rhyming. Ricardo, stop it with that rhyming. So yeah, we'll see you next week for that one. That works. Why are you quiet? It works. Dan?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't like the fact that sometimes you use the words in them, because cryptic clues, you don't use the word from the actual thing. Like, it's like a riddle. You wouldn't.
Yeah. Oh, I can get rid of the first part if you want.
They know. Stop it with that rhyming.
Creepy man. This is a divisive one, but I think a lot of people are going to get it. Tom and Dan don't like me for it.
I don't like cryptic clues that have certain words in which shouldn't be in there, and also you're actually saying to them to figure out the wrong.
Throwing them off the scent. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, good luck.
Thank you. I like you too.
Good luck, guys, and apologies. But we'll be back next week with a brand new case. But until then, like we always say, or be known to say,
we say this, or have been known to say this all the time.
Keep doing what you're doing.
Well, I'm going to go straight there. Unless it's walking in on the toilet of the person you're going on a third date with and being introduced to her friends and family and crying and asking if they like you, because you can probably just pull them to one side and say, do you think it's going well?
Pull what to one side?
Well, not pull, but just sort of, you know, do you think it's going well? Do they like me? Just gently. Maybe even wait until afterwards.
Yeah.
Don't call people a dog for retreating from you. There's so much.
Yeah.
Don't lie about your financial status or...
or creeping out a window, making it stink up of your cheap aftershave.
Yes.
Yeah, don't do that.
On,
don't use too much aftershave.
How many spritz of aftershave do you think is acceptable? 2.
Yeah.
On the neck?
Yeah.
One on the neck, one on the wrist. That's all you need.
Yeah.
Oh.
I'm the same as you, Dan. Nice one.
neck,
Can't stand
Legendary.
when people do
All right, guys. See you later. Take care. Still flip.